Thank you all for joining us today. If you're watching this on the YouTube Live, welcome to the COVID-19 Small Business Support Centre. My name is Ket McQuarrie. I'm the founder and chief disruptor at Enterprise Lab, and we have set up a series of webinars and digital clinics to help small business owners, self-employed professionals, and those that are looking for help, advice, guidance, and practical tips during this COVID-19 pandemic. This is our inaugural session today. We're going to be talking around the areas of business stabilisation and protection. I have two very, very expert, highly expert entrepreneurs online today with me, Piers, Mummery. The purpose of today is to give as much clarity and practical tips as possible as we run through this pandemic. We're all in it together. No one is immune from these challenges. But more importantly, what you have is you have the opportunity to actually redefine, reinvent, rebuild in this current time of uncertainty. So over the next hour, we're going to have a short discussion contextually around the COVID-19 pandemic. We're going to also start to look at some of the key areas within business, and the guys on board are going to be giving you some practical tips of what you can actually go away and do. If you are on the webinar itself, you have the ability to ask questions. So please fire those questions to us through either the chat function or the Q&A. I'll pick those up and get those directed straight to the guys itself. If you're watching this on record, there is going to be a digital asset that's available afterwards, which will transcribe the whole session itself. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my experts. I'll go to Michael first. Michael, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How are you? I'm doing very well, thank you. Very well. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for being on. Michael, could you just share a little bit about your background and your experience for everyone?
Yeah, I'd classify myself as a serial entrepreneur. I've got businesses across the world in property and in entertainment and leisure. I also have a business education company, and I do a lot of high performance coaching in the UK and Australia and in other parts of Europe.
Amazing. Welcome on board, and it's an absolute honor and privilege to have someone of your expertise coming in. I know you do a lot of business commentary for Sky as well, so yeah. You know, we're really looking forward to getting into some of the nitty gritty. And on the other side, I'd like to sort of introduce Piers as well. Piers, good morning. Piers, it'd be great if you could tell us a little bit about you as well.
Sure. So I've been in entrepreneurial ventures for about 25 years across multiple sectors, from technology to retail. And the last 3 years, I've been in the advisory business now, which is helping entrepreneurs to scale and grow their business. Been there, seen it, had it, done it, got all the battle scars, and kind of really excited to be able to help people.
Wonderful. And again, it's an absolute privilege, and thank you both for giving up some of your time and putting all this expertise forward to help small business owners. So let's get into this. Obviously, COVID-19 is something that kickstarted in December last year. It's been slowly spreading itself, infecting across the world. It's had massive impacts on global economies, the way that people are going to live, businesses. We already know that there's been an impact hugely or greatly in the areas of travel, tourism, hospitality, retail, restaurants, hotels. And I think this is also changing the way in which business owners will perhaps do business in the future as well. So I kind of wanted to start off with a little bit of perspective from you both. So Michael, if I come to you first, what's your current take on the pandemic and the outbreak, and how do you think that's kind of impacted businesses or the business community on the whole?
Look, I think that this is obviously it's a disaster on many levels, medical, economic, and I guess social, because it's affected the way we live our lives. But in terms of the business side of things, this is one of numerous disasters that have been seen over the last century. But I think, and when you look at what other experts are saying, especially on looking at a historical sense, this is definitely one of the most severe because it's quite unpredictable and it's not a typical financial crisis. So where we are is we have a situation where obviously at a macro level, which small businesses might roll their eyes and say, well, how does the interest rates and how does the macro stuff affect me? The macro stuff does affect you because this is what we have to look at, I think, at the top of the show, because the fact that governments are about to go into huge debt, the fact that we have almost a move to socialism temporarily where governments are bailing out and paying people's wages and are going to be indebted for decades to come with major deficits. This is going to have a structural shift on the economy. However, just to sum up the initial piece, I want to say that this is not all doom and gloom. It's a fallacy, for example, to say that everybody in the Depression, went bankrupt. They did.
Cool. Lost him there for a second.
Yeah, the joys of technology. A lot of people made millions. A lot of people made millions during the Depression. So the fact of the matter is that it's all about how you see things. It's all about your psychology, and of course, it's a matter of what steps do you take now. We're past the initial shock. We're past the initial 2 weeks. What do we do now, and what are the tangible next steps? And hopefully, we can all three of us kickstart some people on the right track today.
I think that that's, you bring up some really valid points, and whilst there is so much doom and gloom, and there are some real realities that we have to face as business owners, but I'm always a believer that there's an opportunity in everything. Piers, what's your kind of perspective and view on this?
Well, I agree with everything that Michael's has said there, and I could probably talk for hours on this. But I think my view is that first and foremost, as Michael correctly said, this is a medical, social, and economic impact to everybody. But you've got to make a distinction between your professional and business position and your personal position. So my kind of thoughts first and foremost is to look at the individuals that are being affected. And from my perspective, and I would share this with anyone, look at yourself first. And the most important thing is don't panic. The world is still round, not according to 300,000 people, but it is still round. And we will survive. We'll come through this as we have done with previous economic downturns. The difficulty with this, I think, is that it's a fluid process. So it'll be very interesting that what we say today and talk about today may just in a few weeks or in a few months be completely different. And we've already seen in the last few weeks a huge amount of change on a daily basis. So it's very hard to get a grip. So my I've got quite a lot of views around things to do personally and then things to do in your business. And I would start off talking about the personal things to do, which creates a bit more solidity in yourself, and then you're faced with the ability to go out and deal with things. The old adage, which is, put your own face mask on before trying to help others. That rings true with me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What's interesting is, obviously, as a business owner myself, you watch these things unraveling on the news and the media, and you kind of, at first, you almost feel like you're immune to it. I think, oh, it's not going to really affect me. And I think a lot of business owners could be forgiven for the fact that they've felt like that for a period of time, and then there's this anxiety that starts kicking in of, oh my God, okay, what's going to happen? There was a documentary on by Panorama yesterday on BBC. I'm not sure if any of you caught it, but it was looking at restaurant owners who were waiting for that news about the close down in Northern Ireland and other places. Obviously, we went into lockdown in the UK on the 17th of March, ironically being St. Patrick's Day. And you had they showed the perspective of two different business owners. One guy who was just there saying, right, I've got money in the bank, and I'm going to keep going until I run out of money. And you've got someone else who's absolutely devastated and saying, right, that's it. I'm going to have to close down my business all entirely. So kind of, Michael, coming to you first, what's the first thing that that business owners should be really thinking about right now as we go closer and closer into deeper lockdowns and you know and the as the kind of COVID-19 pandemic still continues to roll out what it's doing. I mean, there's so many still record deaths going everywhere. We're going to be in this period for a long time now.
Yeah.
So what's the first thing that you believe business owners should be doing? And I think both Piers and Michael, I want to address the mindset thing first, and then we can go on to sort of more practical strategies. So, Michael, what kind of advice do you have here?
Look, the fact is that, in my opinion, the first thing that people need to be looking at is survival. And I believe that, we are in this is a simply, it's an open and shut survival situation, and that's where we are at. As Piers said, things will go up, down, and sideways over coming weeks. But today, it's a matter of survival for your family. If you're a business, how are you going to literally pay for your food, and survival for how you're going to deal with your employees or your staff or your team. So it is survival. So positive thinking and chest beating can come a bit later. Right now, survival, which means being brutally realistic, which means looking down the road. As you just touched on, it's going to go on for a while. Whether you look at the news and say the lockdown is 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 months, doesn't matter. Look at it as if it's 6 months. Look at it as if the world is going to be disrupted for 18 months. That's how a small business needs to look at it. There's a time and place for living in blind hope, and there's a time and place for living in reality. You've got to look at the reality, work out how you deal with that reality, and then build your psychology and build your positivity or your other actions around that reality. And in an absence of really knowing what we're dealing with, where we really know that, for whatever valid reason, certain information's not being forthcoming, we have to make our own postulations and positions as small businesses and work out how do we cope with the worst case scenario. Because if you can do that, then you'll be okay. If you can't, then there's also other steps that you can take as a business owner as well. It's still not the end of the world if you can't survive, and we can talk about that later as well. But being realistic is the first step, in my opinion.
I think that's some brilliant points there, Piers. I know that you and I have spoken about this in the past, and you have things. You've got some tips here around sort of the personal actions that people can take, really around their mindset. Do you want to share some of those with them?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as an entrepreneur, your business is personal to you. This is your baby. This is the thing you put blood, sweat, tears, and your heart and soul into. So you've got to treat it in a personal way. So for me, I think the sort of three initial things I would always suggest, and I think Michael's correct and everyone's saying you're correct, which is face reality. You're either going to survive or you're not going to survive. So I try to get myself into a mindset, which is, first of all, to choose my perspective and attitude, which is, you can choose how to think about this. You can take the doom and gloom, the fight or flight, there's all the psychology around that. But choose your attitude and create a perspective. That perspective has to be against the backdrop of reality. If you're going to go bust, you're going to go bust. Accept that or don't accept it. But I think you've got to be realistic about this. We are in survival mode for a lot of businesses. It's really not helped by the media, as we know. Just today, I'm reading about a new category of businesses known as the beach sector. I don't know if you've come across this, which is basically bookings, entertainment, airlines, cruises, hospitality.
Yeah.
And the doom and gloom, how 350 billion has been wiped off and so on. So, let's keep some perspective here. And the key is to try and create sustainable thinking, which is, if you choose your attitude, I choose myself to stay engaged in actions that are positively moving my life forwards. It's going to be really hard. This is a brutal position we're all in. So, some of the coping mechanisms. I mean, I read a very interesting article on the Harvard Business Review that, we're dealing with a form of grief here, which is, the 5 things I think within that. You've got this loss of normality, which is, as a species, humans don't really like change normally. And what's been normal to us is now completely upside down and inside out, and is changing every day. The second sort of sense of grief is, and this is an anticipatory grief, which is like it's that despair, which is, when's this going to end? How am I going to come out at the end of this? We've got this fear around the whole economic future, as we were just saying, how can I survive? The other thing, which is a new one for us, is this lack of loss of social engagement. Human beings are a social creature, and that's a terribly difficult thing, missing people and not being able to connect people. The things we take for granted, like, shaking hands with somebody, giving them a hug, you can't do that. And then lastly, I think it's that speed and the severity that this has actually hit the world, and it's global, of course. So that sort of feeling of grief is perfectly natural. I think everyone, and including myself, we all had wobble moments. You know, it's impossible not to. If you weren't having wobble moments, you know, you're not a human being. So the key things I would say is, and you know, this is maybe repeating some of what people have already heard, but you know, just watch limited amounts of news. You know, I pick up the news in the morning and the evening, and I choose specifically only a couple of news feeds. I use the BBC because they're relatively good. Get exercise, and that's a really big thing. You know, it gets the endorphins going. Take time out to talk to people. Stay away from opinions on social media. You know, look at the routine you've got. We're now all cooped up at home, and to lesser and greater degrees, that has practical implications for lots of people. So I'm relatively lucky. I've been working from home for a long time, so I'm quite used to it. But get yourself a routine, you know, and you need really good discipline to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Get up in the morning, get dressed as if you're going to work. You know, don't sit there slobbing out in your pajamas, or, you know, just have a shower, get changed, get exercise, and, you know, sit at a desk at a time.
Yeah.
It's important to have some fun when you're on your own. So, you know, share things you come across. But, you know, but I also think something which is a bit more of a wider conversation around being mindful. So if you find your thought process is just spiraling out into the doom and gloom, which is very, very easy to do when you're on your own, try and be present. Try and be grateful for what you immediately got. You know, if you've got internet access, you know, you're part of half of the world that does have internet access, which is great. The other half don't. Start writing things down, you know, having lists and journals and ideas, the good things, you know, but it's just trying to create a sustainable attitude and a mentality that helps you get through this. And it is that survival instinct. So that's a quick, you know, quick fire on all the things I would do personally. And then how you then move that into your business. That's maybe the next topic of conversation.
Well, yeah, and we're going to move into that quite. I mean, it's quite timely that we get into that. And again, guys, for anyone that's watching this right now, if you have any questions, make sure you're getting them in. There is a chat function. If you're watching this on the YouTube live stream, you can put your comments in, and we can pick those up and actually get these directed to Piers and Michael for you. But as we started with this whole mindsets thing, I think it's important that we need to address that part of it first, because if you are in a sort of a stressed or anxious or have that high level of anxiety type of mindset, the only thing it's going to do is it's going to consume you. In a way, it's going to pivot the way you think and the way you behave, your attitude, and the way you work. And I like the things that you said there, Piers, around, you know, do simple things like, you know, get up, make your bed, get dressed as if you're going to work, and give yourself that kind of routine bit, because it makes you feel like where you're going to. I mean, it's not a case of, especially today with the way we have to live, we're all in lockdown. You know, we're pretty much now fundamentally working from home. But I guess I'm going to give you both of you a little bit of an idea of what I've been doing in my business, and then Michael, I'd like for you to then sort of come in and sort of give some sort of input to what I've been doing, and maybe kind of take it to the next level from there, if you could. Okay. So essentially, when we first started to understand COVID-19 was coming, the first thing I had to do as the CEO of a business is everyone's going to start looking to me. You know, within the company, I'm the person that's navigating the ship. I've got to be the person that's got to be making these key decisions. There was obviously a little bit of vulnerability or uncertainty, and a little bit of fear amongst people that work within the company. Are they going to lose their jobs? Or think what's going to happen? So the first thing I had to actually do is calm everyone down first. At the end of the day, in my head, I just didn't think about myself at that moment in time. I'm thinking about what's happening around me and what's my first responsibility. My first responsibility was to my customers, to my team, and to the business itself. So the first thing I kind of looked at was strategies and systems and processes which will enable us to do three things. Number one, protect the existing business that we have. Number two, start to understand how we are going to be doing business over the next sort of 3 to 6 months. And then three, understand what new kind of products or reinvention do we need to start rethinking about. Now, that third piece was was to come later on. I think the primary thing is get everyone to that centralized thought, so we're all coming from or singing from the same hymn sheet or coming at things the same way. Now, I've been communicating a lot more with my team, keeping them very close to me right now, saying, look, I want you to have at least 2 or 3 check-in calls a week with me, so just to make sure that their sanity and everything's going right. And what we've been doing is looking at now starting to break away some of the unnecessary work and only focus on what's going to give us a short-term return on investment. And then the next thing that we've done within the business is start to go back out to our existing client base and start to renegotiate the way in which we could do business. In some cases, our corporate clients, for example, are saying they want to cancel contracts, where we've kind of had to look at postponing and turning them into sort of more digital delivery. And then you've got others like smaller businesses saying we can no longer, we don't think we can afford to pay you that service, where we've now started to come up with solutions on how they can continue having business and the services to them, even if their payment systems are going to be kind of, or the way that they pay us is going to be changing. So I guess one of the things that I had to do as a part of my mindset for the business and how to stabilize it was I had a conversation with myself first. I said, what's the most important thing here? At the end of the day, Piers, you mentioned about routine, and Michael, you've talked about the fact that, you've got to get yourself into fourth planning. I've created almost a sense of I'm going to keep my mind occupied in different areas of my business, so I don't fall into that uncertainty or anxiety push. And I guess this has created a bit of resolve and resilience in me, where I'm just going to continue being stubborn and pushing forward. As a result, we've balanced the team who thought they're either going to go furlough or be dropped off are now actually more energized to focus in different areas. They're pushing forward and saying, what else can we do? Where else can we work?
So, Kevin, actually, sorry to interrupt, it's quite interesting. We've got a question that's just come up from Olivia, which I think is quite a good question, which is she's asking basically, how can she adapt her offering without feeling like you're jumping on the bandwagon?
Yeah.
And that's something which I've seen a lot of. And I think it's very simple, okay?
Yep.
We're in business. The purpose of a business is to make profits for its shareholders. Be unashamedly honest and open about that. I'm in the business of making money for my business because that creates livelihood and welfare for everybody. So my first thing is, yes, of course, don't be an ambulance chaser. So don't jump on the back of people's misery and demise. But be unashamedly honest and open, saying, look, if you provide a genuinely good service and you're authentic with that service, then shout from the rooftops and say, that's what I do, and I'm very happy to help.
Yeah.
Yes, you need to adapt slightly, and I think you mentioned something about going from a physical to a digital environment. That's a very big part of this. So, in the case of Olivia, so adapting your offering is, be honest, don't discount your services, offer something free potentially, but keep to your core service and be unashamedly honest and open, say, I'm here to help. And, if you put that across in an authentic way, I think people will believe it. I've certainly had that. I mean, interestingly, I've actually won some business in the last week, which, I was quite surprised at. And that's a small coaching project to help an executive through something. So be open. There's a lot of resource out there, but be open, be authentic, and be honest. Don't feel the need to change anything to avoid jumping on the bandwagon. This is an opportunity because every adversity has an opportunity within it.
I love that. And it's such a great answer. And just kind of coming back into this, it plays with the mindset, and it's you've got to have some form of clarity to be able to within your mind to be able to put that kind of assertion forward. So, Michael, you've authored a book on bulletproofing your business, but I think we're talking a little bit more, and as Piers has said here, about bulletproofing your mind here. What's your kind of input and take on what business owners, small business owners, and even self-employed people right now should be doing in their business?
Absolutely. I'll address that in one moment. I just want to address furthering to what Piers was explaining to Olivia, and also answering your earlier question about responding to what you've done in your business, which I think, in my estimation, is spot on, exactly same as I would have done with regards to that. With regards to Olivia's question, I think you've got to look at what are your key assets. You mentioned you're looking at your short-term ROI, cutting out anything that's not, going to be delivering anything in the short term, and also working out how you can, just simply rejig the business to focus on that. I think most small businesses would find that their core assets really is the relationships that they've got. And I use that word specifically, not clients or customers. I use relationships, because it's the relationships that you have as a small business. That's really the key, because clients and customers can go anywhere. It's the personal relationship that small business owner has. Your skill set and your previous performance. They're your three core assets. Then what you do with them, whether you want to call it pivot or schmivot or some fancy term, or whether you just say, hey, these are the three, they're really the three bare bones things. What do I do with those? That's what I think Olivia needs to look at, and that's exactly what you've done. So far as the mindset, what I want to talk about is using the analogy of an athlete. And when you've got, athletes, world-class athletes, Olympians, or people playing in national football leagues, the English Premier League, and what have you, these people they're athletes at the highest level, and we sit at home and we watch them on TV and think they're good, but years and years of dedication and training, and many losses, many injuries, many problems go into winning that match, or winning that gold medal, or losing that match, or getting fourth place and not even getting the bronze medal. But the fact of the matter is, athletes, what do they bring to the table? They bring their core skill set, because the fact is they're naturally gifted and more in a specific area, better than you or I or somebody else. But they also bring a certain psychology. There's plenty of great sprinters around. Many countries are filled with them. Many schools are filled with them. There's plenty of great people that can do a certain sport. But then when you take that with a psychology, that's what drives them to the next level, and that's what keeps them there. And business is the same. Skill alone is not enough. That does not get you anywhere. The fact is, it is a sport, if you want to call it that, in the sense that the mindset has to be right, and you have to have the right psychology, and you have to continually adjust the psychology. And the only way you're going to do that is if you are ultimately in love with what you're doing, you're committed to being excellent at what you're doing, and you are committed to your long-term vision of your business, which is something you touched on earlier. If you do those things, then you then have to manage your psychology. And there's plenty of wobbly moments, as Piers said. We all have them. But the fact of the matter is, that's okay. If you manage your psychology right, and everything else is, if you follow the steps to manage your psychology right, then you couple that with your skill set. That's how you progress, and that's how you move through.
Michael, just to touch on that, something there, sorry to interrupt. There's something I do quite a lot, actually, which is it relates to what Olivia just mentioned about, she's coaching people with anxiety and trauma. Something I say a lot to people is that anxiety is all about what's happening in the future, or interestingly, what's not going to happen in the future. And it's all driven by worry. And that mental strength to be able to pull back from your future worries is, I have one specific thing I do, which is I always say 99% of what you worry about never actually happens. And the proof of that is, look at what happened yesterday that you were worrying about. Did it actually happen? Because the reality is, if you write these things down, you'll probably find that most of what you thought was going to happen is you created worry and anxiety. It doesn't actually happen. And that's a very good way of just keeping that mental strength in check.
Yes.
I totally agree with what you're saying, Michael. It's all about the mental strength and the attitude.
But I just want to add one perspective. Piers, one of the things you said at the beginning of this segment was, look, at the end of the day, we're a for-profit business. We've got to generate revenue. We're answerable to boards, etc., or shareholders to a certain extent. There are a lot of people out there that don't have shareholders and people that they're accountable to a certain extent. And
hang on, they do. They are accountable to themselves.
Exactly, and that's the point. That's the point I was going to kind of reach to. Is from your perspective, what advice would you give to someone? And Michael, I'm going to ask the same question to you, or I would like for you to add on to this as well. What would you do in the fact that if you didn't have shareholders and anyone that's accountable, and as you say, you are accountable to yourself, what do you do in your mindset, or what do you do in your resolve? Because there's a lot of people who kind of will talk the talk, but they won't walk it. They'll agree to you, and they'll hear this, and they say, yeah, you're right, but they won't do it.
Yeah, this is a really fascinating area, Cap. I mean, so there are two things which live through my life: focus and discipline. Okay,
Yes.
so this will sound completely crazy to people, but I am a little crazy at times. I talk to myself. So I have a meeting with myself and I write down an agenda of the things I want to cover. I'm focused and I'm disciplined. So right now, if I imagine myself reporting to a board, okay, and the 5 things in my business that are important, which I've got to prioritize and I've got to work out what's critical and important, is people, cash flow, clients, marketplace, supply chain. Yeah,
People, cash flow,
people, cash flow, clients, marketplace, and supply chain.
okay.
Those are the 5 things right now that I think are critical and important, and you've got to figure out how to prioritize them. If you go to an investment company, talk to a VC, their most important thing for their invested companies is cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. Cut costs, trim yourselves, make sure you've got a runway. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's people first, because if you don't have the people, you can't drive a business anyway. So my focus and my priority is about people. So it's preserving myself and my workforce and putting in place the things I have to do and must do to survive in the business. And, it's going to be brutal. Yes, you're going to have to maybe make layoffs. You're going to have to furlough people. You might have to take salary cuts, but that is reality. So you've got to prioritize first and foremost. So I sit down to myself, and if I was such as the thousands and tens of thousands of individual consultants out there who work for themselves, who can get no government aid, okay, and there's no point in bitching and moaning about that. It just won't happen. That's reality. So suck it up and say, fine, what can I do? So have a meeting with yourself. Treat yourself like the board and the shareholders, and say, right, what am I going to prioritize? Okay, first and foremost, I'm going to look after myself. Okay, so I'm going to look at my overall balance of well-being, which is mental, physical, spiritual. I'm going to set a perspective, and I'm going to set my priorities and write them down. Where we used to have 1-year strategies and 1-year plans, they've now come down to 6 months. They're now down to 3 months. They're now down to a month. They're down to a week. Have a plan for next week. Set yourself a strategy for next week. What are you going to do next week? Starting Monday, finishing on Friday, and account to yourself what you're going to do.
Brilliant. Michael, what could you add to that? I mean, that's fairly comprehensive, but what could you add?
Look, it's very comprehensive, and I'll answer it similarly, but from a slightly different angle. I think, firstly, as a small business owner, if you don't have a board to report to, you still have your family that you're responsible for. And if it's just yourself, you still have yourself. You've put X amount of years into this business. And life is simply a series of decision points. And nobody really knows what's on the other side of any door. It could be a monster or it could be a rainbow. But unless you have your mindset managed to make a calculated decision and work on this is a major decision point. And every day, every week for the next probably year and a half will be a calculated decision point. So what are you going to decide? Are you going to make the decision, well, it's all too difficult, you're overwhelmed, and forget the last 20 years of business is just all too much? If that's the only way that, are you going to make that decision, or are you going to say, no, bugger it, I'm committed to excellence. I don't have anyone to report to except myself, which is, this has been my dream my entire life. I'm in love with this business. I really love my customers. I love what I do every day, and I'm just going to get through this, and I'm committed to it. So you've got to make that decision to be committed to something. Same way you do in a relationship or any other way. You don't. I mean, obviously many people do, but relationships don't survive if people just say, oh well, bugger this. I had an argument. I'm out the door, and that's the end of that 20-year marriage. People make the decision to stay committed, and they're 2 words that you have to make in times of survival. Secondly, I just like to say that I always think that you should look at what other people who, again, I talked about athletes before. I'll also quickly talk about Navy SEALs, the US Navy SEALs, because interesting. The motto of the Navy SEALs, or one of their things that's instilled in them in their training, is the only easy day was yesterday. And if you look at the life-threatening situations these people are going through all the time, and going into all sorts of life-threatening situations day after day after day, their lives are permanently at risk. Their physical lives are permanently at risk. And their motto is that they actually don't expect any easy times. We have an expectation of easy times, and the government's going to look after us. Well, we don't really have the right to expect that. I'm not saying you shouldn't manifest that or be open to it, or try and vibe a positivity and good things in. But I'm just saying that you should also you don't have that right. What you do have in your control is how you handle every situation. And to do that, stay committed to your path and make the best decisions you possibly can. And decisions made out of anxiety are usually the wrong ones.
It's interesting that you've got to that final part, because I've got a question that's come in from the YouTube Live, which is from a business owner who's currently in the the beauty and wellness industry, and obviously they're devastated right now because social distancing means that they can't have their nail salon and hair salon open. They're in this position right now whereby actually they're forced to close their business, and this was their kind of sole livelihood. This is how they're making their money. Now, I spoke about this in one of my Facebook lives with another client that we have, but she's asking the question that would it make sense for her to actually temporarily close her business and actually look at other income revenue or income generation for the time being? So it's kind of like create a side hustle from the business while we're going through this kind of period. What's both of your takes? Piers, I mean, what's your take? Is it inevitable that some business owners are going to have to close their doors, even if it's temporarily?
Yeah, very interesting question, actually, and it's something that I do genuinely believe. So there's an old expression, which is if you're facing east looking for a sunset, it won't happen. And this comes back to facing reality. You can't just be positive and go, yeah, it'll be fine. No, you've got to look at the reality and be optimistic. And in that particular case, as an example, I saw last week of somebody who's literally shut their business and started selling T-shirts online, just because it's something else to do. So somebody who's running a beauty and wellness clinic, which is reliant on footfall coming in, let's be realistic. That's not going to happen for some considerable period of time. So yes, you have an issue, which is you probably won't survive. So my advice would be pivot that business if you can. Perhaps could you offer a beautician's advisory service online, maybe by subscription? Could you produce some content? Could you do something on video? That might be a little difficult to get to grips with, because it requires a huge amount of mental strength and change to try to build that up. So perhaps the opportunity is, just pivot and do something else. Find something that people want and go and sell it. Create food boxes. Be a distribution. Be a driver. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things you could do. But I think when you're faced with reality, you sometimes have to say, yes, we're just not going to make it through that particular thing.
It's interesting on that, Piers. And Michael, just to bring you in on this, again, this is more about bulletproofing your mindset, but I think there are business owners and founders that have huge egos where they'll feel that they'll never go back into employment, for example, if their businesses fail. They will just carry on doing whatever they're doing or try to change and adapt. I mean, with the mindset of knowing that, perhaps your business isn't going to succeed in these periods of time, and considering closing or shutting down that operation, let's take the extreme measure that they don't want to pivot and do something as Piers suggests. What's the likelihood of these people coming back to these businesses and reopening them? And what do you think happens with those kind of founders who have an ego run that says that I would never go back to doing something else other than just this business, knowing that there's nothing in the future the next 3 months or so there. What's your kind of take on that, and what's the kind of advice that you would give to those kind of people?
Well, I think firstly, what was the name of our questioner?
I haven't got a question. I haven't got a name, actually.
The question that we came up before. Okay, well, just to answer that question quickly. Firstly, I echo Piers' thoughts completely, and I think that at this stage, that lady, or that I think it was a lady that asked that question.
Originally, it was Olivia that asked the first question.
But the beauty salon person and other people in that position at this stage, they don't have a business, to be brutally honest. That business it's not dead, but it's just on hiatus. The business doesn't exist. The clients are still there. The people are still there. They're still there, but they're at home. So it's not about whether they close a business down. That business is on hiatus. That's just the unit. That's how it is. So that has to be. You have to accept that, and then you have to look, as Piers said, pivot it. And, as I said earlier, what does that lady or what do other people in the circumstances that you've just outlined now, what do they have? What are their assets? Again, they got their relationships, they got their skill sets, they got their previous performance. Firstly, can those things be wrapped up to another business? Like, for example, a beauty person, they're obviously considered by their customers to be an expert in beauty and in wellness and whatever. So, can they pivot that and do something online? Can they, ask people to pay £20 a week or £100 a month, or whatever it might be? So that's the first thing. Look at your assets and can they be transported to a different model? If not, the fact of the matter is there's no point having a huge ego and no money. It's just, the fact is you do one great thing about all entrepreneurs, and all business owners that do survive, is that they have the ability to read the tea leaves and to look at what they need. Elon Musk, he's always raising money. He doesn't apologize for it. He's always got the begging bowl out. He's a billionaire, but he's still always raising money. Many of entrepreneurs, Richard Branson, Rupert Murdoch, these people, they had near-death corporate experiences where they were literally, Rupert Murdoch in the 90s literally had a banker managing his day-to-day expenses. He's now, worth however many billions of dollars. Now, I'm not saying that anyone's going to bounce back and be worth billions or not. What I'm saying is that the fact of the matter is you do what you have to do. If you have to go and talk to a banker, if you have to go and borrow money from somebody, if you have to go and get a job, you do that. And you stay there as long as you need to stay there to support yourself and your family and to allow your business to be reborn at the right time. And if you don't want your business to be reborn at the right time, you're not committed to it. If you are committed to it, you'll do what it takes.
Just to add on to that point, Michael, and something you say, Keaton, which is, entrepreneurs by their nature tend to have rose-tinted glasses. We see everything as, everything can be done, everything is possible, and sometimes we do deny reality. So that's a dangerous game, and I've seen a lot of people, literally, many people in the last 2 weeks who are trying to go to banks to borrow money to save their bar or their restaurant. I've got a friend who's got 3 restaurants, and his business is on a hiatus at the moment. The reality is, it probably won't survive because he's got overheads, and so you have to make a decision, which is, do I shut this business? Do I pivot this business? Do I go and do something else? And so the person who was asking about the nail bar wellness business, so here's what I would do. Okay, I think. I would probably close that business and find something else to do. Before I do that, the first thing I would do, and this is just real, ground floor practical stuff, is get a spreadsheet and write out over the next 6 to 9 months all of the money that you've got going out personally. Okay, that's all your costs, your mortgage or your rent, mobile phone bill, internet access, children's costs, clothing, all of those budgets. Work out what you need to survive every single month. Okay, and it's got a cash value at the bottom. Then work out what residual income you've got, either by way of income from an investment, or whether you've got cash in the bank or a savings or a pension, whatever it might be. Look at your income line. Then look at your current business that you're about to close and look at the physical assets. Look at the tables, the chairs, the fixtures and fittings, all of the stock, all of those things you've got. And you know what? Let's be brutal. Get on eBay and flog the lot. If you can raise £1,000, couple of £1,000, put that into your budget as an income line over the next 6 months. Because as Michael said, this is about survival, okay? And good entrepreneurs will find a way through, they will survive. But sweat that business to the absolute limit, okay? Stop paying the rent, stop paying the rates, stop paying the utility bills, it's closed. Go in there, take everything out and try and sell the lot and get some cash for it. Then decide to go and do something else. Whatever that business might be, whether it's online or something completely different, become inspired and, go back to the entrepreneurial drive that made you to set that business up in the first place. And you will find a way to get through.
Michael, anything to add to that?
I just want to add another concept about how people can look at this in their mindset. And I could talk all day about this, but we don't have time for it. But I want to talk about the principle of flow. Principle of flow is not just some airy-fairy, whatever thing. Principle of flow is actually a scientific thing, and it's a very important way that you can hack your mindset. And I wrote a lot about it in my book, and there's another also, there's quite a lot of literature about it now. The principle of flow has now been scientifically defined to be basically the opposite of the principle of fight or flight. So we all know fight or flight, and most of the world is in it right now in an elongated, protracted fashion. you got to get out of that. And the principle of flow, you can look up a gentleman called Stephen Kotler, Kotler, who wrote fantastic articles about it. And McKinsey did a 10-year study on it, and they showed a 500% greater return when the partners that were induced into the state of flow got into the state of flow. McKinsey study showed a 500% greater return, not to mention the value to people's wellness. And flow is simply when you lose track of time, when you are so engrossed in something, so absorbed in something that the time and space becomes disjointed, it becomes irrelevant. And we get into it when we're exercising, we get into it when we're in love, we get into it, when you're patting your dog or whatever, these states where, and sadly for most of us, they last about 5 minutes and then it's all over and you get back to the real life, difficulties. But you can hack this. I think it's a stretch to say you could be in it 24 hours a day, but you can hack it. You can hack it on an hourly basis. Get into that state for 10 minutes. And that's where the true creation, the true magic mindset work happens. When you're in that state, you are Superman, you are Superwoman. It's a biological state, it's a neurophysical state, it's a scientific state, and it's something that with a bit of study you can work on and refine and get into.
It's interesting you say all of that. We've got another comment that's come in from YouTube Live on a business owner who's actually looked at this whole thing opportunistically rather than from a negative perspective of what they're losing. Now they are they're in the fitness industry, and they've actually been able to measure actually an increase in business. So what they've done is they observed that most fit pros have stopped marketing on Facebook. In fact, there's a report that came out today that says consumers reckon that only 8% of consumers believe that business should be continuously marketing services to them in this period. However, because a lot of fit pros have reduced their Facebook advertising, the cost of adverts have come dramatically down. They've bought these, and over the last couple of they've bought into this, and over the last couple of weeks they've been able to increase the amount of users or customers by 216, which is something that they wouldn't even been able to do in the last quarter. So they're paying.
Sensational. Yeah,
they're paying an average of between £90 and £1.20 a lead on and they've suggested that 40%, I believe, 40% of those people that they've signed up have actually paid for a whole year up front. So my question here is there, each cloud has a silver lining to a certain extent, and I think what advice would you give to those that actually should for those that can't see the opportunity from or the wood from the trees, and what should they be looking at as an example here of someone who's not taking no for an answer, who's not looking at the government's bailout packages or financial solutions and said, you know what, I'd rather waste more time trying to get customers than actually try to salvage my business and get a bank loan and stuff like that. Piers, what kind of information would you or advice would you have?
Yeah, no, it's a great observation, and I think we've talked a little bit about micro businesses, solopreneurs, and the demise of this. But actually, let's look at the businesses that are out there that have an honest chance of survival. So the first thing I would look at is make a decision as to whether this sort of challenge to us is a revolution or an evolution. Does it mean you've got to completely change your business, pivot, change, shut down, or otherwise? Or is this a change process that's going to take some time? So in a sense, your business is not cancelled, stopped. It's basically on hold for a while. So if you have a belief that your business has got future potential and it's just going to be maybe a 6-month hiatus, then the advice I would say right now is develop a business as usual mentality. Okay, so take away all the extreme thinking based upon what we were talking about earlier. Then double down on and focus your energies and efforts on what I'll call revenue generating activity. Okay, that doesn't mean trying to sell to people.
No.
This is time to reflect and to think. So look at the messaging. Okay, look at the products. How can you shape? How could you improve that? How can you create differentiators? Look at your targeting strategy. Look at the databases and the people you want to go after. Look at your potential new clients, what partnerships you can create. and then maybe come up with 5 or 6 key actions or key tasks that you can create that are sort of smart, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, or time frame. But all of the tasks and activities now, whilst you're waiting for your business to pick back up again, turn them into revenue generating activities, planning, preparation, really build some sustainability into your business.
Michael, what's your kind of take on this? I mean, this is a complete, it's almost as if we've kind of inverted the whole model, where you got people panicking and anxious, to people now who are completely oblivious to or numbing themselves from that and saying, I don't care, I'm going for it. What's your pull on that?
I think, again, this gentleman with the fitness business, clearly they've, both have a never say die attitude, and also they have worked out that they can apply their existing skill set and work it in a different way that's continuing to bear fruit. So I think there's a confluence of 2 factors there, which is great. One of them is absolutely psychology. I think that Piers' tangible points are absolutely spot on. This is exactly what people need to be doing. And talking about inverting this, the fact is we have to invert. We have to invert it. Nobody has a God-given right or a given right, if you want to say it that way, to survive in business. You get certain blessings, but you have to earn the right, and you earn that right by continuing to work out what you can do. And this gentleman is working that out, and other people have to continue to try and work that out. And I want to say there's a great book by an author called John Kay called Obliquity, and his whole take is that you achieve success and you get through difficulty by pursuing excellence in your specialty, not by chasing money, or not by getting stressed out, and not by being egoistic. But obliquity obviously is obliqueness, and that's we all know what that word means. And basically it's talking about going the other way, do something different. So this, if you're working out, you get out of the difficulty. You look at the cloud, you say, well, maybe the cloud does have a silver lining, and if it does, this is what feels good. If it doesn't, then you go get a job, or you go borrow money, or you go do something else. But if it does, how would that feel? How does it feel? How would it feel if I continue to pursue excellence in my business, albeit in a different way? And if that feels good, then you double down and you follow Piers' tangible step by step, and you do it. You be methodical and you do it. If it doesn't feel good to you, or it doesn't look good when you look in your mind's eye, then maybe it's not the right course of action.
I think that both of you have, approached this with great kind of insights and information there. I know we're coming, fast out of time for today, and we have got other conversations that are going to be taking place during this kind of period of that we're doing these webinars and digital clinics. So I know we can continue and expand on our conversations. But I kind of want to wrap this up with some practical stuff that we could give to our listeners or viewers, even those that are watching this kind of on demand recording. Look, to summarize, this is, we're all in this. We're all not immune to any of what's going on. There is the whole confidence, competence perspective. There's the whole attitude, actions perspective. Piers talks about routine. Michael, you've been talking very much around sort of the mindset and the attitude to what you've got to go and do and facing particular realities. So if there were some practical tips that you would like to give to audiences right now, doesn't matter what type of business they're in, what level their business is at. Piers, coming to you first, what 3 or 4 simple practical tips would you give to business owners today on stabilizing and protecting their business?
Well, there's a lot more than 3 or 4 I'd love to give, but in the interest of time, one very practical thing.
Maybe you can have 5 to 10. How's that?
Okay, and these are, some are big, some are small, but here's one I would definitely say: become an expert in audio and web conferencing. It's a bit nuts. Now, I don't know the URL offhand, but tonight at 9 o'clock, Zoom are doing a global conference on how to get the best out of Zoom conferencing. Yeah,
I think I'm gonna need to go on that to make sure I can get the cameras to work.
The thing is, we're going to be communicating a lot more using video and audio. So I'm reasonably competent at this, but I'm going to go on that call tonight because I want to understand a bit more about how Zoom can work with me. So perhaps we can I'll find the link for it and I'll send that to you, Kevin, and you can send it out to people. But
absolutely,
on web and audio conferencing will be one. Second bit of advice is write down the priorities and decide what's critical and important right now. And it tends to be around 5 things in your business: people, cash flow, clients, marketplace, supply chain. So look at those and expand out and then work out what's the most important thing to do right now. If you are in a hiatus period, my next bit of advice will be to double down on the revenue generating activities that you can perform in your business. So look at your culture, your messaging, your products, your go-to-market plans, and write this stuff down. The number of people that don't have written plans. So take the time now, if you've got it, to write a business plan, put job descriptions and job specifications together for your teams. Even go online and do things like free personality tests if you want to understand people better in your team. There's a great one called Enneagram, which I'd recommend anyone to go and do. It's a very, very insightful view of people. So do that for your team. But I think above all, the most important thing as an action is to just look after your own wellness. So be mindful. Okay, stop worrying about the anxieties and the things that haven't happened yet. Face that reality that we're dealing with, build up your resilience, and be strong. If you're an entrepreneur, then you're there for a particular reason. So don't watch the news every day. Stay off social media. Write down lists, keep a journal, get a routine fixed, and have some discipline. Those would be my sort of immediate advice.
And don't worry, guys, if you've missed all of those on the recording, etc., we're going to be putting those tips as well as Michael's, which are going to be coming up very shortly, into a digital asset, so you will have it all written and scripted back out to you as well. So Piers, obviously, when you provide that link and stuff like that, we'll put that into the asset. Michael, what sort of takeaway tips or runaway tips would you give to business owners, self-employed professionals currently who are looking at stabilizing and protecting their business as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, when I'm coaching people in a normal scenario, I always say these are the top things that we need to look at, and some of them still hold true, and some of them have to be changed right now. You always say, look, you want to bring in more clients, you want to close more sales, you want to be more productive, you want to be able to sell your business one day if you want to. Perhaps want to become truly wealthy. You want to actually have running your company or your freelance business as a joyful experience, and you want to survive. They're the basic. They fulfill most business owners' basic needs, and some of them continue to hold true today. But I want to address deal with the first 2, which was bringing in clients and closing more sales. Now, if your business is truly in trouble today, it's most likely because you've lost clients. If you've got a restaurant, you've lost clients because you closed by the government. If you're in if you're a PR company, you've lost clients because people are slashing their PR or their marketing budget. So there there's different reasons why you may have lost clients. Again, if it's government induced and you've been shut down, your power over that is limited. If it's not government induced and it's budget induced, then you still can potentially recover from that. So you got to dealing with those two needs, clients and sales. And what do you do about that? And what tangible steps can you then take? And to me, the key tangible step is then, again, going back to, let's take the attitude that your business hasn't been closed by the government, and you're a PR company or an advertising company or a graphic designer, and you've just lost clients. How do you stay in your clients' lives? Again, can you somehow pivot what you're doing? Can you adjust the payment terms? Can you do something for them? Can you work with your clients to continue to stay in their lives somehow? If your clients themselves have gone bust, then obviously you have another problem. But you have to try and stay in their lives and work with them one way or another, like people working out a relationship difficulty. You sit and work with them and work on how can we still come through this? Can we change the way that we pay each other to come through this? So then the final thing I would say, again, you have to keep visible. The whole point of marketing in general is the word market, taking your product to the market. So if you want to stay committed to your business, you can. There are ways that you can continue to stay visible. You have to stay, even if you put your business on hiatus, like the people earlier in the conversation. Even if you do that, you still should be putting some stuff online. You still should be keeping visible. You still should be keeping in touch with your clients, dropping them a text, keeping in touch with them, because otherwise, and this is the crux of what I want to say, if you don't do that and you don't employ certain mechanisms to do things like that, when we do come through this, you'll be dumped by the wave. We're already getting rocked around by the wave at the moment. And if you don't take steps like that and keeping in touch with your clients, working with them, even if the business is on hiatus, you'll be dumped and you'll be left on the beach while everybody else that did ride the wave correctly survives.
I mean, this topic itself, as you both have said, we can go on, and you know, in so many different areas and facets. I think, you know, it's important, as you know, Piers has highlighted, and you have Michael before that. You know, there's got to be some practical steps that people can take, and the most important thing here is taking some action. Don't bury your head in the sand. You know, this problem isn't going to just go away in this respect. There are so many resources out there. There are so many things that people can actually do. You know, you could think about partnering and collaborating as well with others, you know, so it's becoming more collaborative and community based. You know, I mean, look, this is a typical example for all of you that are watching this. This was a strategy which was only 2 weeks old. You know, I decided that we wanted to provide these kind of business support services, these webinars. I got in touch with my network, Piers, Michael, a number of other people, and we actually started to build something. Now, it doesn't have to be, it's not perfect. I mean, today is a living example. We're streaming on YouTube Live and not Facebook Live. We haven't got Piers and Michael's lovely faces here on video. You've only got mine, unfortunately, and I know that's a pain, so some of you kind of probably want to switch off from that. But the point of it is, you keep going. You keep going. There's never going to be a perfect or a perfection on here. So I think, you know, just wrapping up today, before we sign off, just some key takeaways here. Look after your health, look after your sanity, look after your mindset. If you, as Piers said before, if you're not putting your mask on before you go off to help others, you're not going to be any use whatsoever. Picking up from what Michael has said, look at the reality of the market and understand what is it that needs to change in your business. Or if it is a business that needs to temporarily close down, be prepared to do something different. You know, go out there and do something different. It could change the way that you work. Come back to what Piers is saying here about building routine, having those conversations with yourself. Oh my God, you know what? Imagine you are your own, you know, you're accountable to your board. Have those accountable conversations, because that will kind of set you on the narrow. And like Michael has also said, in order to continue your business, you know, whether you're stabilizing or practicing, you still need to be visible. So you still got to be marketing, however which shape where you do it, whether it's sponsored adverts, or you're going out writing blogs, you're participating in other people's webinars and podcasts, you're connecting. But the last thing that I want to say here is Robert Kiyosaki's the method of the mindset of the entrepreneur in terms of self-employed, solopreneur, business owners, investors. Start to think and start to really think about where you are in your journey. Sometimes you may need to go back a little bit to move forward. And the last thing to say is that your net worth is equal to your network. Don't try to do this on your own. You know, nothing of greatness has ever been achieved without the help of others. Look, we could not be here if Piers and Michael would not come in and support what we're trying to do. So there is a lot of support out there. Just, you've got to go out there, ask the questions, you know, get into the conversations and feel part of something. And I think that will just lift you in a way that will help you go off and do something a lot more dynamic.
Yeah, can I just add a couple of points on to this? So, sort of 6 or 7 key things, you know, to end on some positives here.
Yes.
You know, the world has recovered from pandemics, you know, so we've had Spanish flu, SARS, Ebola, AIDS, you know, this is no different. We will come through this eventually. You know, so that's one. I mean, if you remember, most people don't remember, but you would have heard of the Spanish flu in 1918, 19, and then we entered a period called the Roaring Twenties. which was the bull market. So there will be a bull market on the back of this.
Yes.
It will pass eventually.
Yes.
I think the other thing which is interesting is, everyone will be more grateful for the things that we've taken for granted. Going out to sporting events, bars, restaurants, festivals, concerts, holidays, the gym, even down to simple things like hugs and handshakes. We will not take those things for granted anymore, but they will come back. From a business point of view, borrowing money has never been easier or more cheap. So you know what? If you can borrow money, go and borrow it. It's 80% backed by the government. Just borrow money. The third thing, working from home is now mainstream. So no more commuting. You can get up and sit at your desk and start working. That will be a mainstream thing. And I think finally, the technology that is out there, a la what we're doing now, is amazing to keep businesses productive. So use every piece of technology that's out there, because you can run a business from home using technology, and the barriers to entry are very low. And to your point, Ket, there's a massive network of people out there you can ask to help. So don't be a stranger.
Yes.
I'm easy to find online. Michael is, Ket is. Reach out, call us, ring us, email us, video us. I'm here to help.
Yeah, likewise. More than happy to take, directly or through Catan or however, more than happy to take any questions, or if people want to DM me or drop me a line on LinkedIn and point people in the right direction one way or the other. Because if we all get through it, then we'll all get through it. And what I mean by that is, if we literally do all have to cooperate, collaborate, lift each other up on each other's shoulders to get through this period. And then, as Piers said, there's a positivity at the other side, we do believe.
Amazing. I actually put my mobile phone number on LinkedIn, so it's right in my headline. If you want to ring me, ring me. I'm really happy with that.
There you go. Mobile numbers already there, and I think it is really important that we do keep talking at the moment. It's the bit that's going to keep our mindsets and sanity going. The one last thing, Michael, I believe you are also offering a copy of your book to anyone that wants that. So we'll have that information displayed. I think it's just an email that people need to write.
Yeah, people drop me an email. I'm sure you'll put it in the chat. And as I said, yep, we're making that available free, over 200 pages of content, which hopefully will help people out as well.
Amazing. So then you got Piers with his hotline and Michael with his book. What more do you guys need right now? I think that's going to be that's a really perfect end to our first webinar. Gentlemen, I really, really appreciate the time and the energy and the expertise that you guys have put in today. For those of you that are watching this on recording as much as that goes on live, we've got more webinars coming out this week. Tomorrow we have two, one on attitude and behaviors, which is kind of a follow-up from where we are today. And in the afternoon, we've got Nick Howe from NatWest, the enterprise manager of NatWest, coming in to talk about financial solutions. So the very thing that Piers just finished with in terms of borrowing money, we're going to be tackling that there. We're going to finish the week off with our dynamic duo of Piers and Michael coming back to talk about bulletproofing your business. So look, guys, thank you very much for coming on today. I look forward to catching up with you guys on Thursday. And for everyone else, thank you for joining us. I hope you found the webinar insightful, informative. If there's anything specific that you wanted to hear about that you didn't, contact us, let us know. You can come through the COVID-19 website platform, and there's a contact button there, and we'll make sure that we get that content up and running for you. Piers, Michael, thank you, and I'll catch up with you guys really soon, okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Stay safe and be well.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.